You can be a kind person and still, then there's a list of things. Say no. Prioritize your needs. Set boundaries. Disagree with people. Be honest. Challenge poor behavior. Walk away from toxic environments. Make mistakes. Stand up for yourself. Protect your time and space.
Good morning, Kayla and the Tots.
Happy Tuesday.
Happy Tuesday. If anyone, I don't know if it'll show up in post, but there's a dog in the corner of my screen.
They're very well behaved when they want to be.
Yeah, when they don't have anything else to do. He's got a Kong. Okay. Anyway, just in case anyone's watching, it's not a hairy worm on my floor. Okay, well, this morning, I don't know why so many of our conversations come out of memes, but I'm not even going to be embarrassed about it anymore.
It's the culture these days. I'm not embarrassed about it either.
It's really just a quote in a box.
Exactly.
So we have a quote in a box for you guys today. I think, Kayla, you sent this to me actually on Instagram, right?
And I can't take credit. One of my friends posted on her story, and then I was like, ooh, that's good. And then I sent it to you.
Actually, that reminds me, did I take a screenshot? It doesn't matter. I'll pop it up here. Bing! For the people after the fact. But I did want to give credit to the account that it came from. It says it's from the Female Hustlers Instagram.
Well, it says that Helen Marie, as in H.L.N.P.A.R.A.R.E. That's the actual account that made the quote. And then the Female Hustlers reposted it. So Helen Marie, thank you for writing this out. And then
thanks, Helen.
Yeah.
Oh man. Okay. Well, that's that. But do you want to read it? It sounds like you have it pulled up.
Yeah, I got you. Okay. So here's the box in a quote in a box. You can be a kind person and still, then there's a list of things. Say no. Prioritize your needs. Set boundaries. Disagree with people. Be honest. Challenge poor behavior. Walk away from toxic environments. Make mistakes. Stand up for yourself. Protect your time and space. So I read this as like every line is you can be a kind person and still be honest. You can be a kind person and still make mistakes. So I just thought that was really cool.
I liked it. And then it prompted don't talk to me about this so we can talk about this on the podcast comment.
Say no more.
Shut up. Okay, so here we go. Well, I kind of broke mine down. We sort of pre-discussed this, but I sort of broke down just each one of these and what's hard for me about it, or if it is hard at all. And I guess I can only talk out of my own eyeball window, but I do imagine that this has to be difficult for a lot of women. It seems like we are more prone to be nice.
Mm-hmm. I can agree with that. That makes sense.
At least I feel like I was.
Hey, turkeys, real quick, we want to tell you about our fun new free craft corner. Every quarter, in line with the equinox or solstice, we are going to send out new farts and crafts projects. You can find the link in the show notes. Just drop us your email. We promise not to spam you, but we'd love for you to join us. Now back to the show.
So, my favorite handy dandy number one, you can be a kind person and still say no.
What a good one. That could have stopped right there, and I would have been blown away just the same.
It could have. And I didn't make this up, and I'm sure all of you have heard it, but the sentence or saying that no is a complete sentence is kind of a mantra for me.
I love it. Well, we've talked about this in some of our Rediscovering Ourselves episode and a few other ones where I've been really prioritizing saying no because of our change of life with our baby. We just don't have the time to say yes to things that don't. It's hard because I don't want to say that like fulfill our cup or serve us, because there's things that, as a good friend or family, you just do. Like you're there for people and you show up. But it's like if someone wants me to drive all the way over here for a party where I'm going to stay up too late, which doesn't really even happen anymore, but say that's the event, that's not going to serve me. Like that's hurting me more than it's helping, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Amen. I don't know. No was really hard. It's gotten easier. Still not my favorite feeling. it also depends on the context and the person. I can say no in a work situation a lot easier than I can say no to friends or family.
That's a good distinction, for sure.
Which, I mean, I don't know if that's necessarily a bad thing or a good thing. It's just a thing, but I maybe got a little too heavy on the nose at work for a little while, but I don't know, man. If I turn into a crispy little burnt up onion, I'm going to be useless for everyone.
Yeah.
All right, next up on our list, you can be a kind person and still prioritize your needs.
I feel like this goes somewhat hand in hand with saying no, because when you're saying no to other things that don't serve you, you're prioritizing your needs and the things you need to do to, like you said, not be a shriveled up onion. Is that the word? Crispy onion. Whatever you said.
I imagine being a blooming onion that you left in the fryer for too long and then it's just disgusting. It could have been really good, but you overcooked it. Now it's nasty.
Oh my gosh. I feel like with all of these, as we go through them, the key theme of, I think, what the quote is saying is people who, when you think of someone who's kind, you think of someone who's going to like lay down and do whatever for everyone and just people please left and right and put everyone else first, which I don't know, it's hard. Like you got to put yourself first to prioritize your needs so that you can be able to be there for family and friends and to not have burnout at work. I don't know. That's how I'm taking all this. Yeah, I don't know.
I like the prioritizing your needs part because the first one is saying no and the second one feels like you're saying yes to you. Because I do think sometimes we might still say no to stuff that we shouldn't. God, we're just going on a whole rampage. I think sometimes we say no to stuff that we think, maybe isn't a good idea, or just no, I don't want to do that, or no. But that still doesn't necessarily mean that you have taken time and made time for yourself.
True.
You might be saying no so that you can go home and do more stuff with your family, which is also great, which is maybe backdoor also for you. But I think it's good for us in relationships too. And obviously things change as you have kids and you get married, but even in friendships and things like that, it's okay to speak up and say, hey, I need X, Y, and Z from you. Or I need to have this happen, even professionally. I mean, I've started to learn what helps me at work and be able to say, okay, well, in this room full of people, it's okay for me to take up space and say, hey, nerds, I'm struggling with this week. Could I get some help with this?
That's so true. Like asking for help is also within the setting of, well, I don't know. That's just another facet of this. I like that.
Mm-hmm. Next up is my favorite topic of all topics, which is that you can be a kind person and still have boundaries.
This is like hot these days. I feel like everyone talks about boundaries, but it's actually hard to implement. It's one thing to say you have boundaries, but it's very difficult to set them, especially as a chronic people pleaser.
Yes. I literally, did I put this on here? When I was kind of taking notes to myself is because that's kind of how I process. But I was talking about that I consider myself to be a recovering people pleaser.
Yes.
Because it's just hard. It's easy to do. Coming with that kind of comes from an avoidance of conflict. And, socially, it is adaptive to be able to get along within your environment. I don't think anybody needs to be out here just starting scuffles every 5 seconds. And there's a time and a place. But definitely when you start people pleasing to your own detriment, or when you genuinely know that there's a concern or that you could make something better, but it would, in order for that thing to happen, you have to disagree with somebody and you don't do it, then you're kind of just being a weenie,
God, that's hard. Yeah. And I think it goes back to like discipline too, because when you do want to people please, or you're in a work environment where you feel like you always have to be on and there's no work-life boundaries, instead of balance, I would say boundaries, it leaks into your personal life. And I don't know, that's a big one. Like setting boundaries with work stuff and then setting boundaries with people, especially people who could be a little toxic, which is down on the list a little bit. But even people that you love so much and you just are like, no, I love you, friend, Kaylee, but I actually prioritize this time as me time today and we'll have to get dinner tomorrow. You know, like
Mm-hmm.
even someone you really want to hang out with and stuff, it's like, well, I'm trying to prioritize my needs, so we have to reschedule. I don't know.
Yeah. There's a ton of nuance to the boundaries conversation, and it probably is something that's a continual conversation. The thing that I've kind of noticed is some people I can have a little bit more of a porous boundary with, and other people it has to be a lot more firm. And a lot of that is dictated by the person and their health and their investment back into our mutual relationship. Because I could say I'm gonna get up in the morning and I'm gonna work out first thing, and then if my husband wakes up and he's really dragging ass and he's having a hard time getting out the door, that's not a norm. And he usually tries really hard to help me keep my morning workout time free, but I don't mind letting that boundary be a little bit more porous, knowing he's not going to take advantage of it to say, I can cut out 10 minutes of my workout this morning and I can pack him a lunch. I can help him get out the door, and it's not going to be to my detriment. Yeah. Versus there are definitely some people in my life where if you give them an inch, all of a sudden they've moved into your closet, and those are the ones you kind of have to learn to be a little bit more hard and firm. And then sometimes it's tough because just work boundaries, it's not always as cut and dry. And I don't want to be the employee that says it's after hours on the dot, shut off my phone, fuck everybody. I'm in a job where I can do that a little bit more than if you're a physician and you're on call for 10 days and then off for 20. I mean, I guess you could have boundaries on your 20 days off, but you don't get to have them on your 10.
Right.
When you're on call. If an RN calls you because they need a med written, you don't get to have a fit about it.
Exactly.
I don't know. It's so complicated, but I also feel like because it's so popular, people are using that phrase in a way that I don't think is necessarily true to the purpose.
I feel like it takes a lot of self-development and self-work to get to a place where you can hold healthy boundaries and distinguish the type of boundaries for each relationship or person or people or setting you have. Sorry.
Yeah. I think these are all upping the ante. It's like the further we get down the list, the more complicated and nuanced these skills become. But there's definitely, all of them can be uncomfortable. And that is probably my biggest takeaway from this, is learning how to tolerate discomfort so that you can do these things.
That's a good one. Ooh, okay. I like it. Let's keep going. Go ahead.
Okay. I don't know. I've been reading them. I guess I'll keep going. You can be a kind person and still disagree with people.
This is when we're back in school and I was like, I don't want to read out of the book. Just skip my turn.
You're pre-reading, so you can in your head, so you can practice and make sure you know how to pronounce all of the words that you've never had a problem pronouncing before.
Except one time I tried to say success and it came out success, and I was so embarrassed.
I used to put my thumbs at the beginning and at the end of the sentence that I was supposed to read so that I would know exactly where to pick up and hold off. Dude, nice. The anxiety from reading in class.
We all had it, I bet. Oh my gosh. Okay, back to disagreeing with people. I disagree with our teachers that made us do that. No, I'm kidding. I think it was good. But this one's also nuanced because, especially today's day and age, like everyone disagrees on things that get people fired the F up. And you can still be kind and a general good person, but it doesn't mean I have to agree with everything people are saying. It doesn't even make sense to agree with everyone because everyone has different opinions. How I take this is if someone came up to me and told me something crazy as far as their beliefs, I'm not going to like go off on them. I would just say, okay, I respect your opinion. I don't agree with you, and that's okay. Like, we can move on. Or even like with work stuff, I found that since I've been doing my job for so long, people do come to me with questions and like say they want to do something this way. And instead of saying, I think you're stupid, that's not the right way to do it, we should do it this way, I say, oh yeah, that's an interesting point. What did you think about this way? And kind of like bring up the scenario in a kind-hearted way instead of like, I can disagree, but not be so abrasive with people and still be kind about it, you know?
I have so many big feelings about this. I also think that I need to preface this by saying that I believe I might have a disagreeing disease. I don't know where it started or where it came from. It's probably an overcorrection to my people-pleasing childhood, but I've gotten to a point where I sort of savor discomfort, especially in work settings or really close friend settings. Because if they're really close friends, then I get really in my head about, do they still think I'm a good person? Do they still think I'm nice? Which I do really, this is a good reminder for me, just the beginning part, that you can be a kind person. You can have good intentions. You can mean well. The make mistakes one really hit home. But you can, all of those things can be true, and you can still be making other people uncomfortable.
Yes.
And it's not necessarily a bad thing to be uncomfortable.
No.
I would argue that it's good for you, just like working out makes you uncomfortable.
I 1000% agree.
So the disagreeing with people for me, I don't know. I think it's kind of fun, but like you said, there's a real key in learning how to do that. And I have found that asking questions is the best way to sort of just provide an alternative or get people to think, or to just say, in my experience or from my perspective. And there's a really important piece separating out that someone can have an idea that is stupid, and it doesn't mean they're stupid.
That's a good one. Well, most of the times.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. So another one for me is, I think smoking is gross, but I don't think people who smoke are gross people.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And pulling that apart, where your identity, your intrinsic quality is not tied into a thing that's necessarily maybe a little iffy. And that part of that is our problem for being overly attached to stuff and over personalizing things.
Mm-hmm. Like
But
putting people in a box, almost like, oh, you're a smoker, or you're not a person who smokes, you're a smoker, or whatever the case may be. Yeah.
And I love the importance of language. And I know sometimes in our culture right now, we're getting a little out of pocket with obsessing over how we use language. But I think the root of that is still an important concept, where you can say somebody, it's like the difference of calling somebody a felon versus a person that has a felony. And it's way more words. And I get that that's annoying. And so sometimes that's just not comfortable with the language. But I do see the difference in saying a person, instead of calling somebody bipolar or mentally ill or schizophrenic, calling them a person with said diagnosis. Because it does make a little bit of a separation. And if you're talking in a space where making decisions for other people or on behalf of other people, or things that might alter their life, or we're in a courtroom, like at my last job, I think sometimes those small little changes of language can be important for people who don't necessarily understand those groups or those challenges. If I'm in a room with a bunch of people that are mental health practitioners and we call somebody bipolar, I think all of us operate in a world where we still know that's a person at the heart of what the discussion that we're having. Versus if I'm in the general public and I'm around people who don't necessarily have the same exposure to that specific topic, I might be a little bit more careful about the language that I use, because I am trying to advocate for those people. Does that make sense?
You don't want to put more fuel on the fire of the stigma that's around certain like labels or words type of thing.
Yeah. I went down a whole rabbit hole about words, but disagreeing is good for people. This is my last thing I'm going to say. For anybody that has a problem with disagreeing or wants everybody to agree with them, I think that you need to go sit for a week in courtrooms and watch court deliberations, because literally the whole point, we set up an argumentative system, and it's so fun to watch it in action, because the judge, if there's not a jury, but the judge is the person that's sitting there kind of taking in all the information. And then you have a defense attorney and a prosecutor on each side, and their literal job is to argue and disagree. And within that disagreement, it allows the third party, the judge, to gather the information and then look at the broader picture, and then hopefully make a decision that is either in the middle or the most favorable, or, you know, within the lawful confines of whatever it is that they're discussing. But if you had two people with the same perspective of a defense attorney, victims would never be advocated for, and you would have crazy people just willy-nilly getting out of courtrooms all the time. And if you had two prosecutors, everybody would be in jail all of the time, and there would be no respect or advocacy for the situation of the person that, allegedly committed a crime.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't have those opposing things, the system's fucked and it doesn't work. And I don't get why we can't generalize that to society.
I agree. I love that analogy. And I would go a step further too, and like even taking it out of the context of like a judge is going to decide one way or the other. People can just disagree, like moms. Hey, moms, I can disagree with the way you raise your kids, but I'm going to respect you just the same. We can do different things. In some circumstances, there is, a side that you have to choose, and, exactly what you were saying. And there's other situations where you can disagree with somebody, but that works for them and this works for you, and it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
And also I would stress to people that if you disagree, you're not going to die. So like all this like fucking political shit that's going on right now with the election season, I'm just going to put that out there. Okay, so what? You have a different opinion. Okay, relax. Billy, relax, Susan. Like,
it's supposed to be how we, right. And it's supposed to be how we don't end up living under a tyrant, is that everybody has different opinions, so that there is argument, so that there is opposition. Also, let's be clear that there are right and wrongs, and in any community that, like mom world or certain situations, there are things that need to be disagreed with.
Agree.
I don't ever want it to sound, there's a lot of nuance and a lot of gray area in the middle in between, but there are definitely confines. And in those situations, you especially, I think, need to disagree if we're talking about safety to individuals.
1000%. Yes. That was a big one.
It was such a little sore subject. I know. Maybe we all should just enjoy being little disagreeers, but not to be like a trolling piece of shit, but just to say, hey, have you considered this? Okay. Next, you can be a good person and still challenge poor behavior. We basically just discussed this.
Yeah.
But if you see somebody doing something that's stupid,
call them bitches out in a nice way. Or maybe
say,
not.
Hey,
it depends on the situation.
This behavior seems not ideal. You might be a nice person. I'm not gathering that from the way you're behaving right now. Let's try again.
Mm-hmm. And at the same token, you're being a kind person because you are seeing that this is detrimental to them or other people around them. And then in turn is why you need to challenge that stuff. Like if someone's acting in a way that's hurtful to somebody or yourself or them, you are being kind by causing discomfort and challenging poor behavior, because at the end of the day, you are a generally good person and you want the best for everyone.
Right.
So you have to call people out.
At my old job, most awkward thing in the world was having somebody that was on your caseload that you had to have regular contact with, and then having to call Adult Protective Services on them because there was something extremely unsafe in the home.
Yeah.
It's like, wah, wah, this is uncomfortable for everybody, and I'd really rather not. But sometimes you have to do things that make everyone not happy. Okay. Yep. Next, you can be a kind person and still walk away from toxic environments.
I feel like this goes back to some ways prioritizing your needs and putting yourself first, because you can't stay in toxic situations, whether that's a physical environment or an actual like metaphorical environment, relationshipable environment. If it's toxic, whether that's manipulative or just not healthy or really not healthy and abusive, like I don't know, there's so many ways to take this, but you should leave and get out of what doesn't serve you, what's toxic and what's dragging your life down. Like life is not about that. Life is about disagreeing, pushing back, setting boundaries, getting out of the way. But that doesn't mean you're a bad person. Like you have to do what's right for you.
And I know there's going to be times where it's not as easy as, okay, like a good example would be there were probably some aspects of my old job that were toxic as far as the work environment. And I couldn't just, when that stuff came up, I couldn't just say, I'm going to just walk out of the door, because that's not an adult choice. But there were definitely times that I walked away from a situation or took a break, or sometimes I had to walk to the situation because people were trying to send me messages, because then they didn't have to have a face-to-face confrontation. So I would be like, no, and present myself face-to-face in their office so that they had to say it to my eyeballs. But I will say that it's hard. It can be really hard, especially if you're talking about family members or friends or a town that you grew up in or a job. It took me 6 months probably to unclench. And then looking back, I'm so thankful that because there were tons of positives about that job. So thankful I had that experience. Kind of thankful that I had the toxic environment experience so that I could learn how to navigate some of that. And then very thankful that I didn't stay there forever.
Yeah.
And realize that I didn't really realize how bad I was feeling until I was out of that situation.
Crazy, right?
It's like the frog. If you put it in a pot of water and then you turn on the thing, it'll boil to death because it just keeps getting hotter little bit by little bit.
Yeah. Or if you put him in a boiling water, he'll jump out immediately, but he's not aware of this. Yeah, I totally get that.
Next up on the list, you can be a kind person and still make mistakes.
Boo. Boo. Being human stinks. We all make mistakes, man. It's tough.
That's hard for me.
Oh yeah, that's how I'm taking this.
It's the worst for me to myself. Mm-hmm. Me to me is so mean.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like it's such bad self-talk. And it's like the guilt that people hold over, I mean, everyone makes mistakes. It depends on what level of the mistake is, but we all make so many mistakes. And even when you're really trying to put your best foot forward, you still make mistakes. Mm-hmm. Life is not laid out perfectly where it's like a video game and you know exactly which button to push. Like, you don't know. And sometimes there's consequences, whether you realize them in the moment or after. It's so difficult. And trying not to beat yourself up over those is what takes a lot of work, I would say.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's also a thing for all of us to remember, is that people can make mistakes and still be good people. So if somebody uses a word that you didn't like, or if somebody says something that hurt your feelings, is that one blip out of a bigger context? Do you even know the bigger context to know?
Yes, I agree.
Because
I just wanted to say, wah, like, get over it with that scenario. If
someone say piece of shit stuff all day, every day, and they treat people like shit, if someone treats people like shit and they talk like shit, then yes, then I think we're entering the toxic environment situation.
Yes.
But if you've known someone for 5 minutes and they say something that you don't like, maybe take a minute to say, maybe this person just doesn't know my situation, or doesn't know that hit a nerve, or maybe nobody ever mentioned to them that that's maybe not the thing to do in this situation, instead of just going all or nothing and whammo on people.
And that's when you can respectfully disagree with people. And it's okay. But yeah, I mean, even the big things, it's like, oh gosh, I don't even know where it's going. I'm just thinking, like, when things happen, like life happens, and you just have to know who's there to still love you and not hold those things against you. But really, it's you can't hold those things against yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just, again, I keep yapping about my last job, but having worked with people that committed crimes, I mean, there's definitely some crimes where I'm like, should you still be participating in society? I don't know. I don't have the answer for that. But I also can't live in a world where one person makes one mistake or a series of mistakes and they're never allowed to be redeemed from that. Right. I would argue, how can you have that mentality if you're a Christian? Hello. But I would just also argue, how depressing is that to think that you were a serial thief for a while because you had a drug problem. And if society doesn't believe, and then if you don't believe that you can make mistakes and still be a good person, that you have a good core that you can come back to, if you're willing to do the work and go through the struggles and suffer through the consequences as the result of the poor decisions that you made, why would you even bother trying? I'm not saying we should clear a path and just say, come, have a nice nerfy, no consequence life. But there's got to, if you take that hope away from people, I don't know. I have to live in a world where the majority, not always, but the majority of the time, I believe that there's a good nugget inside of somebody making some really fucking dumb decisions.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
And there still needs to be that little carrot somewhere that after they serve prison time or do community service or be on probation or whatever the case may be, that there's still the hope of redemption at the end of it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay. You can be a kind person and still stand up for yourself.
I think this goes back to prioritizing your needs, setting boundaries, and disagreeing with people. I don't think you should compromise your own beliefs or your own time or your own values just because you don't want to upset someone.
I've always had a hard time with conflict. Again, the conflict avoidance is stronger for me in the relationships that I care more about because I have childhood eggshell tippy toe behaviors versus at work. I don't mind as much. You know, I have my last job. I just can't say enough about how much I learned and grew and developed a thicker skin, you know, for people who are saying, oh, Kaylee can do more and going, no. Kaylee can't do more. Kaylee's already doing too much. Kaylee is turning into a deep fried onion. Like, but that was really hard. That took me getting to a place of being in a pretty bad situation of burnout and having a few meltdowns before I had learned, like, wait, we can be like, excuse me. No. And as a social worker, I think we talk about it a lot in our field, but it's worth saying to everyone that you have to be able to advocate for yourself. And for the empaths in the world, like myself, it's really easy to advocate for other people and want to stand up for other people and be a protector and all of those things. And then you have to remember your inner child needs that too sometimes.
I agree.
Last but not least, you can be a kind person and still protect your time and space.
I love it. It wraps up everything. I mean,
all right.
Again, oh, nice.
The cone of I'm making a cone of silence.
A bubble of peace. I feel like this one, I don't know, they all tie in together because they're all different important facets of the way we live our life, but it's just not feeling guilty, being able to be confident in yourself and knowing you're a kind person, knowing you have the good intentions, but still protecting yourself, protecting your time, protecting your boundaries. Like, it's just all matters.
Yes. And if you can check in with yourself and your higher power and the morality that you live your life by and say that I did the best I could with what I had and I had good intentions with what I've done. If other people are still butthurt about it, that is, you have no control over that point.
That's the clip. I like it. That was everything. I love it. It's so true.
So if we're making the highest possible aim, if we're shooting for the best possible goal and we make a mistake or we mess up or we hurt somebody's feelings in the process or we have to say no or cut somebody out or take a break, that does not mean that the aim is the wrong thing, and it doesn't mean that the endeavor isn't worthwhile. I'm going to Post-it note this and stick it somewhere. If anybody wants to write these down and stick them somewhere for yourself and then show them where you stuck them, please tag us in the comment because I would love that.
Ooh.
A little peep
Exercise.
In the window.
Mm-hmm.
I meant mirror of your car. You know, like put it on the little flappy do. So when you check your makeup on your way into work, it's like, oh yeah, I'm allowed to have boundaries.
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
Oh, I can tell Debbie no. No, Debbie, I don't want to go to lunch with you because when I go to lunch with you, it's really just me being your free therapist. And then I'm done with lunch and I feel more drained than I was from the first half of my day. I don't work with any Debbies, so I was allowed to use that name.
Oh man. Well, this is a good reminder. I think this is a working practice. Do you have a just the tip?
Well, let's see if the music inspires us.
The tip.
Well, I will say check out the Female Hustlers account because I like their inspiration. But also shout out to Helen Marie. I also just want to do a plug. This is for you to be a healthy person and prioritize your needs. But eat some prunes. I'm telling you, Kaylee, I know this is really off topic, but I'm making a boundary for myself and setting a standard that I'm going to eat 3 to 5 prunes a day. And I've been feeling great.
Okay. Well, so our tips, let's summarize them real quick. Okay. Female hustler.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how we find Helen Marie, but you could go on the Female Hustler and find
She's
her.
Tagged. Mm-hmm.
And then eat some prunes.
Yeah, because when you feel good, you can be confident and say no. When you feel good, you can prioritize your needs. When you feel good, you'll challenge poor behavior. Do you like that tie-in?
I really liked the tie-in, and I think that when I have really bad gas because I'm overly constipated, it is a little bit more difficult for me to feel like I can command a room at work.
Exactly. You have to put yourself first, and that means being healthy and getting after the day and not being a little bitch, but being kind to people and being an adult and being respectful, but also disagreeing.
So eat some prunes. And join us next week for Kayla's conspiracy theory episode.
Oh, you don't want to miss it. I'm so excited.
If you liked Kayla's energy last week, you're going to freak the fuck out for the coming. Love you. Bye.
Love you. Bye.